In today's video, we're going to be looking at writing sentences from expressions. This is going to be a continuation of our Algebra 1 Foundations video series. We first looked at defining what variables and expressions are, then we moved into writing expressions from sentences, and now today we're going to do the opposite of what we did last time, and we're going to be writing sentences from expressions. Now, if you need a refresher on how to write those expressions from sentences, or even what a variable and expression is, feel free to go back to those two earlier videos in order to get in that practice or get a refresher on what they are. Now, moving into what we were looking at today, which is writing sentences from expressions, let's look at one example to begin with. Let's say you had this type of expression right here. So what we're going to do today is that we're going to take such expressions and we're going to be writing sentences from them. And the most recommended way, or the way that I'm recommending right now, is that in order to write a sentence from this, is first we have to think, well, how would we explain this to someone in front of us? Say you had this expression right here and you had to describe it to someone. The first step that you would have to take is you would have to evaluate what this expression is, and you would most likely break it down into the smaller components to identify each one of them, and then string those components together in order to make the sentence that you want. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to get each individual component that is making up that expression, and then we're going to identify what those components are and string them together to make a sentence. That will be the easiest way to turn an expression into a sentence. So going back to this example right here, let's identify the components that make up the expression. So right here, we're starting off from left to right. We have the number 2, so we're just going to write that down as 2. And then we have our variable, the unknown, which is a number. So we're just going to write down a number. Given that it's an unknown, we're not going to write down what it is. And then we have our addition symbol right here, our operation in this expression, and we're just going to say plus. And then lastly, we have our number 3. So this expression right here would be written by stringing together all these components right here. And the sentence that would be formed is 2. And then one thing that I have to mention right here is that there is an operation that is joining this number 2 and the variable x right here. And that operation is simply a multiplication symbol. So I'm just going to put that in there in order to identify it. And let's just write that down as our multiply or multiplied by. So going back to writing the whole sentence, we would have 2 multiplied by a number plus 3. And that right there would be your sentence for this expression. One thing that I have to mention is that when you're looking at these expressions, or if you're trying to write sentences out of these expressions, there are numerous ways of writing an expression sentence. And it depends on what you're comfortable with and what terminology that you are more familiar with in order to string it together. Say, for example, in this case, instead of using multiplied by, I could have used times. So this expression could have also been written as 2 times a number plus 3. Both sentences represent the expression up here, but you have written it in two different ways. So you have to keep that in mind when we're going through these examples. Just because you have one way of writing it and someone else has another way of writing it may not entirely mean that your way is incorrect. As long as you have all the components identified correctly, stringing them together to form the sentence that you want will most likely be a correct way of describing what the expression is that is in front of you. So given that we've looked at this as an example, let's move into another example. Say you had this type of expression instead. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be showing you many different types of expressions in order to kind of illustrate the different ways of writing sentences from expressions. Now, say you had this over here and you wanted to write the sentence for it. Again, we're going to be writing each individual component, and then we're going to string those components together in order to write the whole sentence. So right here, you have 7, and you have your operation here, which is an addition, and I'm just going to say it's a plus. And then right over here, you have our variable, which is a number. And lastly, you have the power of 3. So I'm going to write the power of 3. But this right here, this power here, could also be written simply as cubed. This goes back to what type of terminology you're more familiar with. Now, the whole sentence could be written as 7 plus a number to the power of 3. Or you could write this as 7 plus a number cubed. Both these sentences would represent the expression that has been given to you. Let's move on to a third example. So what if the expression you had instead was similar to this? You have this over here, and this one is a little bit different from the other two expressions that we're looking at because, of course, we have the division symbol right here. And I've even put in some brackets in order to illustrate how you would write a sentence that has brackets in it. And again, we're going to be identifying each individual component that makes up this expression over here. So we have the number 4, and we have our division operation here. So we're going to say divided by. Then we have these elements here that are in the brackets, and those elements are a number. We have our addition sign, so I'm going to write down plus. And lastly, we have 7. So if we were to write a sentence from this expression right here, we would start off by stringing the components together in order to make a sentence, but we have to be mindful of the brackets over there. So if we were to write this sentence over here, 4 divided by a number plus 7, we wouldn't fully illustrate the brackets. We would have forgotten completely about the brackets because although the sentence looks right, it is a little bit misleading in the sense that we might write it simply as saying that 4 is divided by a number and then we're going to add 7 to it, depending on our order of operations. So this could be written as 4 divided by x plus 7. And in order to highlight what it actually looks like, it would be similar to writing 4 divided by x plus 7. Or it could be written like this. And that right there would be incorrect. It does not illustrate the expression that we have at the top right here. This expression, it could be similarly written as 4 divided by x plus 7. So what you have to realize is that this component right here, this x plus 7, should be written together. And because it should be written together, it should be written together in the sentence as well. So in order to write this expression correctly, yes, we would have the 4 divided by, but in order to not confuse it with this expression right here, this one right here, we would say the sum of. By saying the sum of, we're saying that it's going to be in a bracket. We're saying that the components inside of the brackets are what we're trying to identify. And we're saying it's the sum of a number, and that number is x, and 7. So this right here would be the proper way of writing it without causing any confusion by just stringing it together like so. And that's the reason why I wanted to show you the way of writing a sentence that has brackets in it. So let's look at one more example in order to conclude everything here. Say you had this expression here. How would you write this as a sentence? And again, we're going to be splitting it up into the individual components. So we have the number 4. We have our variable, which will be simply a number. And then right here, we have the power of 3, or we're just going to write cubed for this example here. And in order to identify all the components in this expression right here, we have to remember that this 4 and this variable here, a, are being multiplied. So there is technically an operation in between these two. And this is something that was introduced in our very first video, introducing variables and expressions. So this operation right here will be represented with the term multiplied by. And in order to write this whole sentence, taking each individual component and putting it together, we would have 4 multiplied by a number, which is our variable there, a, cubed. And again, you could write this sentence a little bit differently by identifying that cubed could be written as the power of 3. So at the end of the day, you could replace this with 2 the power of 3. And that right there would be a different way of writing the same expression. So right there are all the examples I'm going to go through today. I hope you learned something new in this video, and if so, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. This is Math Prep Tutor, and I hope to see you next time.